America is not the Wild West that you are depicting. We only have the problem in our cities and unhappily in our schools, where people like you have been able to get laws put on the books that keep people from being able to defend themselves. I honestly don't understand why you would rather have people be victims of a crime than be able to defend themselves. It's incomprehensible.
You're an unbelievably stupid man, aren't you?
It seems to me that you're morally obtuse. You seem to prefer being a victim to being able to prevail over the criminal element. And I don't know why you want to be the criminal's friend.
What a ridiculous argument. You have absolutely...
You know, I have to say this. Piers Morgan, if you speak to British people, Piers Morgan was a clown, a figure of fun, a joke character in British media. No one took this fall seriously. He goes to the United States, he picks up still an important show. He goes on this thing, the pomposity, the lack of knowledge, the lack of information, and the cowardice. Ahmadinejad, this vicious, racist dictator who wants to commit genocide, is on the show. And Morgan refuses to ask him anything other than a passing question. He asks him, how many times have you been in love? I mean, he just gives him easy questions over and over again. Yet he plays the tough guy when it comes to gun control. I've spent 26, 27 years living in North America. How long have you lived in North America, you fool? However, I'm sure he earns a lot more money than I do. But it's not about money. Well, partially. Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America, joins me now from Washington. I'm sorry you had to put up with that buffoon, but well done, sir.
Well, I appreciate your compliment, and frankly, it wasn't a problem. I could see at the time, this guy wants to have a train wreck. I just need to get out of his way and let him do it. And he did very nicely all by himself. It wasn't any great performance that I put in. It was that he was just so unbelievably over the top that I think even people that might have wanted to agree with him had to think, but no, that's not my spokesman.
I hope so, because I've always said this, that having grown up in the UK and spent the second half of my life in Canada, I'm not going to pretend that I completely empathize with your position. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't really know what the solution is. I think we saw the face of evil just last week, and it's very hard for any government to control evil. But have you in any way changed your position since what happened in Connecticut? Is there any room for some sort of further gun control in the United States?
Well, I think we have too much, and it's been one of the major contributors to our problem. All of the mass murders that have occurred in our country in the last 20 years, with one exception, occurred in places that were legally gun-free zones. A lot of schools, but other places as well. Gun-free zones. Well, obviously, that's an invitation to the criminal element. If somebody is as full of evil, and I'm glad to hear you use the word, because some people don't even want to say evil. If somebody as evil as this that would contemplate that, he's going to look for where in his mind he can be the big dude that has the biggest body count. And he's not going to look for that at a police station or at a gun range. He's going to go to a place where the American people have been told, don't protect yourself here.
Mm-hmm. I understand that, but you know what the argument would be from reasonable people? It would be, yes, look, there will always be horrors committed by people like this. In China, around the same time, a man stabbed 20-odd children. It was horrible, but because it was a knife rather than a gun, he didn't kill as many people. That even though crazy people will do horrible, repugnant, amoral things, if the weapons are limited and controlled, they can do less damage. Is there any purpose, any meaning, any authenticity to that argument?
Well, I think it would help if we looked at where crime occurs in the United States. Primarily, violent crime occurs in gun control areas, which is namely, by and large, urban areas. If you look at the suburbs, if you look at the rural areas in the United States, that's not where violent crime is occurring. Gun Owners of America is located in Fairfax County. It's a suburban county right outside of the nation's capital, over 1 million people, and the traffic attests to the fact that it's a very urban county. The last 2 years running that we have had data available show that our murder rate in Fairfax County is 0.3 per 100,000, well under the national average, which is jacked up by places like Washington, D.C., and New York City, and Chicago, and so forth, where guns either have been banned or even now that the courts have undone the gun bans, we dare you to get a license to get one of your guns here in our city. And so the criminals continue to have free reign.
Okay, but hold on, I mean, we've got to be fair here. You're completely right, of course you are. And the same applies to this country. The same applies to most countries. There's the odd exception. You'll have a rural area. There have been two in Britain, actually, incredibly surprising, where people have killed innocent people. But you have crime in areas where you have criminals. And urban centres tend to attract criminals. You'll always have a fairly large underclass, unemployment, gang organisation, institutionalised violence. You're not going to have that in farming communities or in suburbs where people are earning good money. I mean, surely it's inevitable. You'll always have crime.
The demographic argument was analysed by Dr. John Lott, at the time an economist at the University of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And by using various econometric equations and computer analysis, he was able to say, okay, what is the impact of demographics, of the urban underclass? And the only two variables that were controlling, that had a causal relationship on lowering crime, had nothing to do with demographics or finances or any of that, or the density of population. It had to do with, is there a cop nearby that the criminal might see?
Yeah.
And is it known to be an area where the victim might be armed? In other words, can you carry a concealed firearm in the jurisdiction? Here in Northern Virginia, people can rather easily get a permit to carry a concealed firearm. In the District of Columbia, forget about it.
Mm. And I know Washington reasonably well. You're honestly telling me, I mean, I've left the city 15, 20 minutes just beyond the Catholic Cathedral, for example, that I visit in Washington. Areas like that. You really think that if they feared that maybe I had a gun, suddenly I'd be fine and safe and dandy? Surely, sir, it's more complex than that. There are people who will try and hurt you, whatever they think you're carrying.
They may, but they are nevertheless rational creatures. They just happen to be evil. And if they think that their skin is on the line, if they think that police officer might see them, if they think you might be armed, that's going to change the way they approach getting their next meal.
Okay.
And we have the data from Dr. Lott has done a study of every one of our counties in the United States, over 3,000, for now over 20 years. He published his book on this research some years ago, and he's continued to update the data every year with the federal government's crime data that are published for all these jurisdictions.
Okay. All right.
And there are only two factors that have a controlling influence on crime.
All right. We have to be running out of time. I thank you for your time. By the way, don't give arguments and facts to Piers Morgan. It makes him very upset. It gives him a headache. It's just not fair this time of year to do this.
I should have brought some aspirin with me. You're quite correct.
Thank you, sir. You take care.
You too. Thank you very much.